Can you speak as well about the threats imposed by, the nuclearization of India and Pakistan?
Well, that's good that you ask, because we don't hear about that very much. But both India and Pakistan are nuclear armed countries. They're both expanding their nuclear arsenal, their stockpile of weapons, and their delivery systems. They're increasing the range and capability of their missiles. They both have a very active missile development program. And they both say, but especially Pakistan, which is the weaker of the two, that if they're invaded by India, they will use tactical nuclear weapons at the beginning of a clash between them. If it looks like India is about to overtake their conventional forces and invade and penetrate into Pakistani territory, that they're ready to use nuclear weapons at the start of a conflict. So you have a real worry about some kind of incident or clash on the border triggering that kind of a scenario. And there have been repeated India-Pakistan conflicts, border conflicts over the past decades.
One of the other fears that I've been rattling around in my mind is the fear that the Biden administration seems to be, I'm hoping they're moving away from this, but for a while taking seriously the idea that Saudi Arabia normalizing with Israel and working to be the representatives of the Palestinian people, because hey, they're both Arabs, right? In these peace negotiations could involve a deal that, and this is apparently Mohammed bin Salman's desire, to create a nuclear weapon in Saudi Arabia. My God, that's terrifying. Can you speak about that potentiality?
Oh, yes, I think you're right to be worried about that.
Yeah.
Especially in the present circumstances. Now, the Saudis never talk about acquiring nuclear weapons. They talk about acquiring a complete nuclear fuel cycle. They want to, they claim this is for peaceful purposes, to have a nuclear power capacity in their country, and to have a complete nuclear fuel cycle in the sense that they would produce plutonium for their reactors, conceivably, and have the ability to extract plutonium from their reactors, have that kind of technology, which conceivably would give them the ability to manufacture a nuclear weapon. So up until now, the U.S. government has, and this is against U.S. law, as it's unless there were, there are various loopholes, and I think that the Biden administration's ultimate goal here in the current Mideast crisis is to get Saudi Arabia and Israel to work together for some final solution to the conflict in Gaza. They see that as the only way that there could be a positive outcome. And Saudi Arabia is going to have a list of demands,
Right.
For what they want. And what they want is that nuclear technology that I described that would allow them to theoretically to manufacture, to acquire enough nuclear material to produce a nuclear weapon, which until now they've been denied. But under present circumstances, I could imagine the Biden administration or a future Trump administration giving in and providing them with that technology as a sweetener to sign a peace agreement or some kind of agreement with Israel, and get Netanyahu out of the trap he's currently in.
It's terrifying because that just circumvents all Palestinian sovereignty and also was a huge reason why Hamas stated they made their attack, right? Because they felt cut out of these kinds of procedures. Or talk. So that's a whole different rabbit hole that we could go down. But I think you put it quite succinctly. Lastly, as we begin to wrap up, how many nuclear weapons are out there at this point? Do we have a good sense? And like, how much has that increased even since Cold War times?
Okay, well, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute publishes an annual survey of the world's nuclear weapons, and it's considered the most reliable in public space. And they say that Russia has about 6,000 warheads, and the U.S. about 5,000 nuclear warheads, something in that order. And France and the UK have somewhere in the vicinity to 200 or 300. India and Pakistan, maybe 200 or so each, and Israel maybe 100. So you could add all of that up. When I say the U.S. has all of those and Russia has all of those nuclear munitions, not all of them are currently deployed or available for immediate use. Some of them are in storage or decommissioned, but available in the event of a heightened crisis. They could be made available for use. Under the current treaty that the U.S. signed with Russia in 2010, the New START Treaty, both sides are limited to 1,550 so-called deployed strategic nuclear weapons on ICBMs and bombers and submarines. And that's the number that both sides have that are ready to go at an instant moment. Both also have hundreds of so-called tactical nuclear weapons for battlefield use. We don't talk about those much, but they're aimed for a war in Europe. So there are quite a lot of nuclear weapons floating around out there.
And truly, lastly here, how can we make denuclearization a more urgent political priority in that way, maybe here in the United States?
I think you have to first inform people and educate people about the level of risk. I think most people are sort of under the impression that the nuclear issue has disappeared since the end of the Cold War. Subsided would be a better word. And that other threats, non-nuclear threats, are more pressing, including the climate. And those are understandable impressions. What I tried to write in my piece for The Nation is that we have to reconsider that impression and understand that the nuclear danger has increased significantly in the past few years and is going to grow enormously in the years ahead as China builds up its arsenal, Russia builds up its arsenal, and the U.S. expands the capacities of its arsenal. And there's a three-way arms race, and there are these flashpoints. So people have to become, understand that the nuclear risk isn't far off some distant horizon. It's moving closer and closer to us, and then take action to reduce that risk.
Well, I agree with you completely and greatly appreciate your time today. Michael T. Klare, the nation's defense correspondent, professor emeritus of peace and world security studies at Hampshire College, and you can read his book, All Hell Breaking Loose, or his recent piece in The Nation, Surviving an Era of Pervasive Nuclear Instability. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to raise these issues.